Hey, this is a video talking about Fusion 360, which is an Autodesk computer-aided drafting design program that you're going to use to mock up what your robots look like. And so, first thing you do when you log into Fusion 360, and you have to, it really doesn't work well on the Chromebook, so we got to do this on a PC or laptop that we've got, and so we'll get going there. But once you get logged into your Fusion 360, you're going to make sure that you're signed in at the top right hand. Won't let you in unless you're signed in, so you should see your name up there. First thing we want to do is configure it for what our defaults are. So we're going to go to Help, and we're going to go to our Quick Setup, and this should be a one-time deal that you have to do in your default units. You want to make sure you change your default units to inches. It's going to be super important because everything we do is in imperial measurements in inches, and so trying to get our measurements set up and our hole spacings and all that is going to be really important for us. So once we get that set up, you're going to see your dashboard here, and this is kind of everything that you've got. With anything, you can hover over it and see what a part or what a tool does. I'm going to go through kind of the basics. There's so much that you can do with Fusion 360 as a computer-aided design program. We're really just scratching the surface to get us going. So once you get logged in, you want to make sure that you're on the Albert Lee Robotics team. So we're going to show our data panel, which is the top left-hand corner. It should say Albert Lee Robotics. The reason you want to be a part of the team is because the builds that you make and the models that you put in are going to save into folders that others can work on and iterate and make changes. And so you as a team can really kind of set up, you have your own folder, and we can get stuff going. Also, I've already got all of our assets put in here. So I've got all of the VEX robotics parts put in so that you can see and get those. So before we do anything, if I just go in and I'm going to go back here to the home and I'm going to go and I want to add in a C channel. It's not going to let me because I haven't saved my project. So this is a little unusual in that you have to save your project first. But just, I'm going to show you, I'm going to go drop this in. I'm going to click and insert into current design. I get an error that says I haven't saved anything. So the very first thing that we have to do is save our project. So we're going to hit this save button up here on our untitled design, and we're going to hit the save button, and we're going to give it a name. And so I'm going to call this, just for you guys to see, this tutorial is a base chassis, and in our location, we're going to save it to our project folders, and we have a set of project folders that I've built for you guys called VEX builds. And we have 2 robotics teams right now, so I'm going to save this to the zip ties folder. So I'm going to click into there, and I am going to hit the save button, and it's going to save my bot up here. And you're going to see this is the version, it'll say version 1 here in just a second to let you know that it's the first version of it. Version is important because it helps us to see iterations or changes that other team members have made or things that they've got. So we'll really kind of talk about and go through what does this look like. Using an external mouse, which is really important for this. You can work with a trackpad, but it's hard to do. So all of my instructions in this video are going to be using the trackpad. So the first thing to get around or see, if I hold down the center wheel, that goes into what's known as pan mode. So I can pan left, right, up, down. I can move and pan the screen where I want. If I scroll the middle wheel out or towards the screen, it's going to zoom out. If I scroll the middle wheel down, it zooms in. So zoom out, zoom in by scrolling the middle wheel. If I hold down the shift key and then click and hold the center mouse wheel, I then can move my mouse to orbit and see different orientations of my model. So those are going to be the same basic tools that you've got down here at the bottom that you can get around in. And that's how we're going to navigate through Fusion 360. So the first thing we want to do is bring in our chat. We're going to start to build our base chassis. So I'm going to go back in. I'm going to go from the home to show you guys. And I'm going to click on my assets, which is my library. I'm going to click on our VRC parts. I'm going to go under structure. I'm going to go under our C channels. C channels are set up by 5 wide, 3 wide, 2 wide. These are all the parts that you can buy from VEX. So I'm going to go in and we're going to do an install just for this base. We're going to do 35 channel chassis. So the aluminum C channel 35. Now you've got steel as well. I can keep scrolling in. You got all kinds of stuff on here. So I'm going to go to the 35, and where was the 35? Right here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click on it, and then I'm going to click insert into the current design. And what this is going to do is it's going to drop that part in for me. So I'm going to be able to see that first part. Now, right when it drops in, I can see the move copy for my everything that I want to do with it. So I can rotate it. So if I want to click here, I can rotate it on the plane that it's at. This one I can rotate it. I'm going to rotate it this way because I want it to be, this is going to be my left side. So I'm going to make it rotate at 180 degrees. And I can type a number in here of what I want it to be. So I can manipulate and move wherever I want. You want to try to get your parts somewhat aligned because it's going to be easier to join them together. So you want to kind of move it in kind of where you think you want it, and then we'll go from there. So I'm going to move it in here, and this is going to be our first part. I'm going to slide it over just a little bit. When I'm done, I hit OK, and that part is there. Now, if I need to go back and move it again or do something with it, I can go up here to hit the select button, and I can double click to select the entire part, right click, and then I can go back in here and I can see the move copy, all the different features and things I can do. So if I go back into the move copy, it reopens up the move copy so I can see everything that we've got here. So now I'm going to add another one in. So I'm going to go right back to it, and I'm going to do my C channel again. I'm going to right click, insert into the current design, and I've got my second model right in there. Okay, and I'm going to hit OK because that's going to be where it is. Now these are going to be essentially the outside of my chassis. So I want the inside of the C channel to be facing inside the robot. This is going to be kind of the outside. It'll make sense once we get it here. So what we're going to do is I'm going to pan up a little bit and I'm going to zoom in. It doesn't matter which end you work on, but what we want to do is we want to create joints. And there are two types of joints that you're going to be working with when you're doing your CAD design. You have rigid joints, which is going to be mounting most of your structure and your parts and putting your brain and all those things in. And you have revolute joints or motion joints. Your revolute joints are going to be for your axles and your wheels. And we'll do both in this video, so we'll kind of show you a little bit of both. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create a joint. So under the assemble, you can see these two pieces here. We're going to create a joint. A joint is nothing more than saying that we're going to bind these two together and create a relationship between them in the model. We're going to affix them to each other. I like to use the hotkey, which is J for joint on the keyboard. So I'm going to do that for everything, but you could just as easily go to the joint icon and click on the joint icon. So the way that this works using the hotkeys is I'm going to hit J to joint, and it's going to bring up my joint. And I'm going to click what are the two joints that I want to do. So now the first thing that I've got here is if I click on this motion, I can see the different types of joints. And here's right now we're using a rigid joint. We're going to leave it right where it is. We also have a modular revolute joint that we do for something else. Now there's a ton of different joints in there, really advanced CAD stuff. This is intro Fusion 360 CAD design that I'm giving you. So we're just getting the basic. So the first thing we're going to do is we have to find our first model that we're going to create the joint onto. So the way that I do this to make sure that I'm always on the right one is I first want to go in and select the face. So you want to zoom in and select the face or the side that you want to connect to. So I'm going to left click and it should turn blue to say, hey, this is where I want to connect to. The reason for this is because there's lots of points. So I want to connect to the middle, the bottom, the inside, the outside. So I always click on the face first. So then I can go in and I can get the side that I want to connect to. So I'm going to click on this top right in the middle of the top opening of the C channel, and I'm going to click, and that's my first joint. Now this joint is kind of turned into a transparent color to say I've already created a joint there. So now I'm going to pan over just a little bit. I'm going to zoom back in, and what I want to do is I'm going to click on my face again in the middle, and I'm going to click kind of that same spot on this, and that's going to join my two models together. Now it joined them together, did exactly what I wanted to do, but it's a little messed up because what it did is it flipped the model. So I'm just going to go in here and I'm going to uncheck the flip. Even creating the joints, you might have to do a little orientating. So we're going to talk about that as we go through. So I'm going to uncheck the flip. And what it's done is you see now both of my models are essentially right inside of each other. So we're not done yet. We're going to take it a step further. And we're going to create a relationship between the distance of these two joints. So I'm going to click the left mouse button and I'm going to move this joint to the left. And I'm going to come up here and I'm going to move it 16 inches. Okay, and we're going to see what it is. So this is going to be our base of our robot is going to be 16 inches wide. So that's going to be the outside of it. When I'm done, I hit the enter key. And I have created a joint that is got these two moved, and these now are bound together, showing where it's at. The other thing that we've got is down at the bottom here, I'm starting to get a timeline. And this timeline is going to show the progress of everything that I'm doing. So I can go back to this timeline and see all the things that I've done. I can also see where these joints are, and that's going to come important when we start to do our prototyping and do our rapid prototyping. And so we also see our timeline up at the top here, so we can see everything that we're doing, everything that we're working on. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring in 2 additional C channels, the same 35-point C channels. So I'm going to bring in 2 more. So I'm going to do my right click. I'm going to insert it into the current design. I want this C channel is going to be kind of over here because this is going to be, I'm going to make the housing for our wheels. And so then I'm going to hit OK. So I kind of got it moved into the right area. And then I'm going to do another one. I'm going to right click, insert it into current design. And for this one, I'm going to rotate it so it's facing the other direction, 180 degrees. And then I'm going to move this to the left a little bit so it's going to be right inside, close to this design. Okay, so now I'm going to hit OK. Now they're not lined up. You can see that they're not lined up. If I go to orbit around, I can see they're not at the same height. They're kind of all over the place. We're going to see what we need to do to get these lined up and set. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create our joints again. And I always bring the one that you click on first for your joint is the one that's going to move. So once I've kind of created my base or what my starting point is, so this one here, so if I go to do the select and I select this model or this group here and I go to move them, if I go to select and I go to move this one, right, and I go to do the move or copy and I move this one, oh, it didn't do. When I've got my joints, it moves both of them. Okay, so what I want to do is I'm going to make this my base, and I'm going to do this. So if I look at this, if I go to the move copy, right, and hold on, let me go here. I'm going to double click on this one, and right click to do the move copy. And let's say I'm going to bring this one down just a little bit so it's going to touch the floor. So when I hit OK, you'll notice my other one comes down as well, right? So because I've created that joint, it's got everything there. So now what we're going to do is I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to bring this second one to my first one. So I'm going to pan in, move up, and orbit to where I got it. And so the first thing that I want to do is I'm going to click on my first one. So I'm going to get more of a top-down view so I can see this. And I'm going to do the same thing that I did before. So I'm going to hit J key to create my joint. I'm going to zoom in. I'm going to click on the face to make sure I'm on the right face. Then I'm going to zoom up a little bit and I'm going to do this top part here, the top center of the opening. That's going to be my first connection. Come over to my second one, which is going to be my base. I'm going to click the face, click the opening, and it's moved them both in there. I'm going to unflip them again to make sure they're not flipped. Now, what this one has done is it's put them right inside of each other. So I'm going to click and I'm going to slide this one out some. And what we want to do here is we're going to make this 3 inches. So I'm just going to type in 3 and I'm going to hit the enter key. And that's going to be 3 inches. So now these are lined up and they are 3 inches apart. Okay, so I've got them 3 inches apart. I'm going to do the same thing over here for this one. So I'm going to create another joint over here for this one. So we're going to go in and I'm going to zoom back in and same thing. I start with the piece that I brought in. So I'm going to J for joint and I'm going to scroll in. I'm going to pick my face, click on the face, click on the opening, pan over, click on the face, click on the opening. I'm going to undo the flip and I'm going to slide this over. I'm going to do 3 inches. I'm going to put 3 in there and hit the enter key. So I got 3 inches. So now if I look at my model, I have got 2. This is going to be where we put our wheels. So this is going to be the start of our chassis. Now we're going to get to where we start to take some pieces off here and modify some different lengths. And I'll show you how to do that here in just a second. but you can start with whatever you got. So for this one, I'm going to insert another 2x35. So I'm going to right click, insert it into the current design. Now these are going to be my cross braces. So what I want to do is I'm going to rotate this. So I'm going to look at this. So I'm looking at this. So the way that this is oriented is not correct. So I'm going to rotate it like this. So I've got it 90 degrees. So it's going to be flat the way that I want it to be. And then I'm also going to change my angle by looking at the top of it. And I'm going to rotate this sideways like this so I know kind of what I'm doing with my model. And so what I can do here is I can raise this up in the air a little bit so I can see what I've got. We want to kind of get it somewhat in the vicinity to know where we're at. When I'm done, I hit OK. So now here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to put this cross brace is going to go all the way across my model, and I'm going to have 10 holes open in the front. So I'm going to put my cross brace is going to go right here after this. These little V's indicate every 5. So I'm going to put it right here. So this is where it's super important. You want to make sure that you get your stuff matched up, and this is going to be super important here. So what I want to do is I want to connect this edge to the bottom face of this hole on the same edge. So if I did this edge to this, then my holes won't line up. So you want to make sure that you're clicking on the right holes, the right openings. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go in and I'm going to create my face first. So I'm going to do what do I want to join to. So this is the first piece that I want to join. So I'm going to rotate underneath so I can see underneath it. So I'm going to orbit underneath so I can see underneath. I'm going to pan over. So I'm going to hit J for my joint. I'm going to click on the face of the piece that I'm bringing in. So I'm going to click on the face that I'm bringing in. The bottom, because I want the bottom part to be connected. Now this is super important. I want to make sure I get that far outside edge of the hole. So I'm going to click. So that's giving me my first joint. Now I'm going to go back up and I'm going to orbit around, shift, center mouse button, orbit around. I'm going to zoom out a little bit here. Oh, let's see here where I can get to where I can see out. I'm going to orbit around. And then I'm going to zoom back in and pan up. So my first joint, remember I did that outside edge. So I'm going to go to my 10th hole. So I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Here's 10. So I'm going to go to this hole right in here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click because I want it to go on the top of this face. And I want it to line up that hole to that hole. And you see it brought it directly in there. When I'm done, I'm going to hit OK. And if I look at this, I'm going to see that my holes are lined up perfectly and it goes across my model, right? So that's going to be lined up exactly how I want it to be lined up. So when I'm looking at those openings, see right here, my openings fit perfectly. So when we're putting our axles or our screws in, those kinds of things are going to be there. Now, so what we're going to do next is we're going to add a second piece because we're going to do a second brace that's going to go across. So I'm going to do another C channel. So I'm going to right click, I'm going to bring that C channel, insert into the current design. I'm going to do the exact same thing. I'm going to orbit this around so I can get a better view of it. I'm going to rotate it 90 degrees so I get it set on its edge there. And I can also type in 90 if I want to. I'm going to orbit on the top of it so I can kind of see the top of it. I'm going to rotate this around 90 degrees. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of, if you want to, you can grab stuff and kind of move it out of the way. So if I go here, I see the hand, I can grab it. That gives you kind of a free roam. I'm going to grab it and just kind of move it out of the way so I can get it kind of where I want it to be. And I'm going to hit OK. So it's kind of in the right ballpark. Same thing for this chassis. I want to keep them symmetrical. So I'm going to do 10 on the inside. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit, orbit underneath. Orbit underneath, zoom out just a little bit so I can see what I want it to see. And I'm going to do this inside hole here. So I'm going to J for my joint. Click on my first section here, the face. So I want the bottom to connect to the top. I'm going to do this inside, this edge, because I want that edge of the hole to line up with the other edge on the top. So I'm going to click there. I'm going to zoom out so I can get back to my model. I'm going to orbit back around to the top of it. And I'm going to zoom back in. Here's my holes. I got my 5. Here's my 10. I want it to go right here. Now I did that. Remember I did that second hole. So I don't want to do this first hole because it won't line up right. I'm going to do this second hole. Right now you can pick whichever one you want. So this is going to be this one. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here, click on the face, click on the top, and bingo. It's moved in there, and I hit OK. Here is our base chassis, right? So this is going to be really our base chassis for our bot. So this is going to be our first kind of chassis that we're going to look at for our robot. And we've got our joints. Now I can go back. I can either click on these joints if I want to go back and edit them. I can go into my timeline and I can see all the joints and adjust or do the joints on the timeline. So if we look at this model and we get in here and we look at this, you notice I got some structure hanging off the end. We would obviously in a robotics team, we're going to cut that off. So how do we get rid of that? So I'm going to show you guys how we can get this. And this is a super important step that you want to make sure that you do, because it's going to really help you when you're getting into your prototyping and changing the size of your robot, how you can get stuff done. So what we're going to do is I'm going to kind of rotate around so that I can see what I'm looking at here. So I'm going to shift click, I'm going to orbit, rotate around. I'm going to zoom out a little bit and pan over. So the first thing that we want to do is we're going to create a sketch. So we're going to go up at the top in our toolbar under the create. Excuse me. And you're going to see sketch. And what we're going to do is we're going to create a sketch. So I'm going to go to click create a sketch, and this is going to allow me to create some sort of a sketch or anything we want. So what we're going to do is where do we want to create this sketch? And so what we want to do is we're going to zoom in and we want to create our sketch on the edge of one of our C channels that's hanging off. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom in. I'm going to pick one of these little edges right here, and I'm just going to click to select the plane, and that's going to be where we've got it. Now, if you see this revert positions or capture position, what we want to do is we don't want to revert. We always want to capture what our current position is so that everything stays where it is. So we're going to say capture position. So now there's what it's done is it's moved in to create a sketch on the side, and it orients our focus exactly as we want. Now, what we're going to do to make ourselves nice and easy, we're going to use the rectangle tool. And I'm going to show you how to do this. We're going to click on the rectangle tool to create our sketch. And all I want you to do is draw a box somewhat around the piece that you want. You can go over a little bit, and I'm going to go over. And I click once, drag my box, click again, I made my box. Then I'm going to hold down my center mouse button to pan over. And I'm going to create our second sketch as well. So I'm going to, it's still the same sketch. So I'm going to click to start my rectangle, drag my rectangle, click, I've got my rectangle. Now, here's what we want to do with this, and this is super important to make sure that you're not cutting off pieces that you don't want to do. Under our constraints, we want to use the CoLinear, okay? And so it's by default is not up here. As you use this, you'll see them. So what we want to do is we're going to go under our constraints, and you want to find CoLinear. And so when I go in here, I've got CoLinear. CoLinear means you want your two lines to be lined up exactly so they share a common line. So this is going to make it super easy in our world when we're extruding or taking apart our stuff. So I go to CoLinear, and now that I've got CoLinear on, what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on one edge of my line. So I'm going to click on my blue rectangle, and then I'm going to zoom in a little bit, and I'm going to click just right on the top piece of my C channel here, and it will bring that line automatically there. So then I do the side line, go to the side of the C channel. I'm going to pan over just a little bit. I'm going to get my bottom line, and I want to make sure I go to the bottom of my C channel. There's the bottom of my C channel. Then I'm going to get my left line, left side of the C channel. I have just made, and I didn't have to do any measuring or anything like that, exactly set up to be my C channel. So I'm going to pan across. Don't hit OK when we finish the sketch, because once you finish your sketch, we've got everything in here. So I'm going to pan across, and I'm going to do the exact same thing with my CoLinear. Left line, left side, top line, and you got to scroll in a little bit so I can see it, to the top edge. zoom out just a little bit, my bottom line to the bottom edge, pan over just a little bit, my right line to the right edge. So now we've got our sketch. We're going to hit finish sketch. So now here's what we've got. I have these two pieces that have these sketches that I've created that are going to be, we're going to extrude or cut those pieces off of our metal. Now, this is the part that I was telling you about. You want to make sure you follow this next step, which is going to really help you when you're prototyping. So right now, if I go to try to hit the extrude button, and I'm going to hit the extrude button, and I click on this face, I can't do any extruding. And the reason for that is because I have it set up in our libraries that our base parts are what they are. So we're not going to change our base parts. So what we have to do is we have to break the links between our base parts to essentially say we're going to create a new part. So the way we do that is we're going to hit the select button and we're going to double click on our piece. And you're going to notice, see where it's lit up here? That's going to show this is where this piece came in. And this link means it's linked to our library. Essentially what we're doing is creating a brand new piece. So I'm going to right click on this and I'm going to say break link. And when I break the link, that's going to say it's going to make its own piece. Now you see there's no link there. This is its own piece that I've just created. Okay, so this piece is unique to this model. I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to double click, right click on it, and I'm going to do break link. Okay, now breaking links is I've now created my own model or my own piece of what we've got. Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to go in and we are going to extrude, and we're going to create our extrusion. So we're going to cut off those pieces. Okay, so the way that we're going to do this is we're going to click the extrude button and we're going to select the everything that we want to extrude. So we're going to do both these pieces together. So I'm going to click once and it's going to light up nice and blue. And you can pick all of the sketches or the things that you want to extrude, the things that you're going to extrude. So I'm going to go in here and I'm going to click again, but you notice it didn't, I want to make sure I also get that original piece that I created. So I'm going to click there. So I have everything blue. Okay, now this is the critical piece for you. So right now, when we're extruding, it's going to extrude by distance. So when I've got up here, extend type is going to extrude by distance, which means it's going to extrude. If I say 2 inches, it's going to extrude 2 inches or cut off 2 inches or 3 inches or whatever it is. What I really want with my model is I want to be able to make it so that whatever the base width of my model is, my structure doesn't come off the edges. I want it to be nice and clean. So the way that we're going to do this is going to really help us with our parts is instead of extruding at distance, we're going to extrude to a face. Okay, so what we want to do is under this extent type, I'm going to change this and we're going to say to object. Okay, now this is why. Watch what happens here. This is going to be super awesome. I'm going to pan down and I got to pick the object I want it to be cut to. So I'm going to rotate around and I'm just going to say I want it to be cut to so that it's the same as this face here. So I'm going to select that face. So my cuts on my structure are always going to go to that face. So when I hit OK, you're going to notice now that my structure is cut so that it goes directly to that face. So my metal is nice and neat. So look at how clean this chassis looks. Okay, now here's the beautiful part. Watch what I'm going to do here, right? So my chassis, say for whatever reason you guys decide you're using this base model and you come back and say, all right, 16 inches, we're way too wide. We got to cut this robot down. So we can go into your CAD design, or you can go into your CAD design and you can say, okay, I'm going to change my design. And so if we look back at our timeline, and whoever your lead CAD designer is, could go back to this first joint, so our base chassis, and I'm going to click on here to edit the joint. And when I see that, it's going to come up here to edit the joint. So right now I can see this offset on my x-axis. I got a 16-inch distance in between them. I'm going to make this, let's make this 12 inches. So we're going to make this offset 12 inches. So what I'm doing is I'm saying, instead of being 16 inches, it's going to be 12 inches wide for that initial base. When I hit OK, the rest of the model is going to build itself in, and it's already cut those pieces off for us. If I did it just by distance, I say, hey, I only cut off 2 inches or only cut off 1 inch, then what's going to happen is I change the distance from 16 inches and I cut an inch off. Then I change the distance to 12 inches. I got to cut another 4 inches off. So I'd have to go back in and recut those inches. So if you do it to the face, you don't have to do that. Now I'm going to go back and I'm just going to put this back to where it was. So I'm going to find my joint in the timeline, or I could click on the joint wherever it is. And I'm going to right click. I'm going to do edit the joint. I'm going to go back in. I'm going to change my offset again back to the 16 inches. And it computes everything in, and there's our base. All right, video number 2 coming your way is going to have putting our wheels and our drive pods in and kind of setting up and creating a sub-assembly there. So this is our first video intro to Fusion.